Welcome to the Truck Crash Litigators Podcast, hosted by the Trucking Injury Law Group and part of the Lawyer Minds ecosystem. The Truck Crash Litigators Podcast is dedicated to discussing the latest legal trends in the trucking industry. We'll discuss everything from new case laws and regulations to breaking down specific cases. Our goal is to not only share our knowledge and insights with other trial lawyers, but also to inform and educate the general public. Here are your hosts, Kevin Coluccio, Lincoln Seiler, and Matthew Sharp.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Trucking Injury Law Group podcast. Today, I'm here again with my colleagues, Matt Sharp and Lincoln Seiler, and we're going to talk a little bit about countering Amazon's defense to liability for the conduct of delivery drivers. Folks may think, well, why the heck are you going to talk about that? And the reason is that although when we all hit the roadways and the highways, we may see a stream of Amazon vans coming down the roadway. When somebody is injured, either seriously injured or suffers fatal injuries in an accident involving one of those Amazon vans, one of the first things that will happen is that Amazon will say, hey, they're not our workers. They're independent contractors, and we have no responsibility. It's frankly a defense that is being used across the country, and it's being hotly contested in various states through litigation. Matt or Lincoln, do you want to share any of your thoughts on this whole Amazon? It's not our fault. You got to reach out to somebody else for accountability.
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is you might say, why does that matter? It matters because the independent contractors or these transportation outfits that Amazon hires don't have enough insurance when you have a serious collision or a fatality. So they don't have assets that you can recover from. So they say, here's our $1 million, even though you've got a $10 million loss or $20 million, and you can't recover anything more from that entity if you can't hold Amazon responsible for what these people were doing.
So Amazon's putting out these drivers, they're driving in Amazon trucks, and it says Amazon. At least it looks like it's Amazon. That's what that's an everyday layperson's going to think. I got hit by an Amazon driver. And then all of a sudden you find out there's these layers of corporate bureaucracy that have been created to evade liability. And so what do you do to try and find, to hold Amazon accountable for those drivers?
No, exactly. Continue, Matt. I think your point is,
So, one thing you look at is control. So a lot of the evidence coming out is that Amazon controls the routes, they control the timing, meaning, you have to deliver the goods within a certain amount of time. They follow the driver in terms of GPS to what they're doing. So the level of control, it's inconsistent with calling somebody an independent contractor if you exercise control over what they're doing.
Yeah, just to back up a little bit, the reason control matters is because when you've got, it goes back to the law of principal and agency, right? And if you've got somebody that hires somebody to do something on their behalf and they retain the right to control the way that task is done, whether they exercise that control or not, if they have the right to that control, then under the law, they're deemed to be that person's agent, right? So for Amazon and other cases like this, such as like a taxi case, right? You get into a taxi or you're hit by a taxi and you think, oh, yellow cab is the people I have to sue. And you quickly find out that every driver is an independent contractor. So what the law looks at is, did Yellow Cab or did Amazon, in the case we're talking about, retain the right to control the way that its agent does what Amazon wants it to do? And what Matt was talking about is With Amazon, they retain a lot of control over what their drivers do.
Yeah.
Well, I would just add a couple of things. Interesting because we want people to know that this litigation is in flux, one, and two, it's really important to retain attorneys that are working on this litigation. And with respect to our group, we're members of an Amazon subgroup of the Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys, and we coordinate with the folks on that in that group and on the listserv in order to exchange information. What's interesting in many ways, for example, is that Amazon supplies certain apps or dash cams for these drivers, and there's requirements that they deliver in certain time frames, or they don't get additional routes. And so there are a variety of control issues that we're researching along with attorneys across the country that are critical to this litigation. So Matt, I apologize. I briefly interrupted you.
Oh, no, that's fine. Because you triggered another a point that I was going to make, which is ostensible agency. So, but just kind of as a highlight, I mean, it's also important, like the Amazon litigation is the same concepts that many of us have litigated in many cases, from a medical malpractice, healthcare, insurance, bad faith. I mean, companies are always trying to limit liability by blaming independent contractors who really aren't independent. So like ostensible agency, do you hold that person out as your agent, as your employee? Well, here, I mean, the people are driving under the representation that it's an Amazon truck. Amazon knows that. So, I mean, these concepts are things that you have to dive into to really build up the facts to avoid an independent contractor theory.
Well, and Lincoln mentioned yellow cab. Lincoln, I remember several years ago, you, along with one of your colleagues, had a very successful result in a case where it wasn't yellow cab, but it was another cab company similar to these cases with Amazon, where they claimed up it's an independent contractor. And briefly tell us about what you guys were able to establish, because there's a correlation here, I think.
Yeah, it was a local cab company here in Seattle called STITA, Seattle Tacoma International Cab, something or other. And one of their drivers was on the way to the airport in the left lane, and at the last minute made a right across 4 or 5 lanes of traffic to try to get to an exit, cut my guy off. He lost control of his vehicle and rolled and came to rest upside down in the middle of the highway, and then was subsequently hit by a truck while he was on the phone trying to call 911. So it was a really tragic accident. And of course, the cab company tried to say, well, he's an independent contractor. He's got $1 million in insurance, and that's all there is. He has no assets, and we have no responsibility for his conduct at all. And so when we dug into it, what we found was that the cab company exercised all kinds of control over these drivers. In the driver's lounge, we got in there and there were signs in there. You must take this route. If you don't, you'll be suspended. You must direct traffic for part of your shift. You must. There were all kinds of ways in which the company retained control and actually exercised control over its drivers that were hidden, but we were able to find out. And ultimately, we had a trial on the issue and took the jury, I think, about 30 minutes to decide that the cab company was responsible for the acts of the driver. Same kind of issues, almost exactly. It's the same kind of issues where you've got to show that Amazon has the right to control, and that's ultimately the minimum standard. And if you can show that they actually exercise that control, then that helps even more. And Kevin, you were talking about the app they have. It's called the Mentor app, and it monitors everything from how fast they accelerate to how fast they decelerate, how they go around corners, whether they're making phone calls, how many miles they've been driving. And then the AI dash cam constantly watches them to see if they're yawning, are they fatigued, are they, again, talking on the phone. And these are not things the independent contractors require. These are things that Amazon requires them to do. So they've got the right to control and they exercise control. They try to hide that. But attorneys that know what to look for and who are aware of this issue can help with that.
You know, in the Uber litigation, and when this is a major issue in California, a lot of the evidence that was used to establish that Uber really was in more in an employer-employee relationship context was actually the claims by the California Labor Department, because the same issues pull up for those things as well. So I imagine we'll see a lot of investigations in the future in Amazon that probably will shed more light on their control.
You know what people need to understand is I think there's a real not across the board, but there's a real kind of a positive feeling towards Amazon, because you can reach over to your computer, and if you need something, it gets there the next day or the next couple of days. So people are kind of tied into Amazon is great for this delivery or that delivery. But what people I think we're going to learn over the course of this litigation is that potentially Amazon is putting these processes together for benefits in the workers' comp arena or tax arenas. So it's going to be interesting to peel some of that back. And it's starting to happen across the country. So we're very involved in Amazon litigation issues and trying to work with other lawyers to figure out the best methods and information and evidence that support people that are injured and whose lives have changed as a result of an Amazon accident. They happen, frankly, all too often, is what we've seen.
And the motive that Amazon is utilizing is the same playbook that companies after company have tried to utilize. I mean, you go to the hospital and you see the doctor with the, hospital sticker, and that doctor is subject to certain controls by the hospital on what he can or cannot do. And there's malpractice. It's, hey, that's an independent contractor, not our problem from the hospital's perspective. So it's the same playbook that Amazon's playing out. It's just on a much more massive scale because it's Amazon.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if people realize this. We just got an email a couple of weeks ago where Amazon has become the largest or one of the largest motor carrier delivery vehicle companies in the country.
If you count their independent contractors.
Right. But the volume of vehicles that are being thrown out there into our communities is obviously massive. And our public safety and the safety of those in our communities are at the forefront of the work that we do. And really striving to figure out this Amazon defense and pursuing cases for people to come to us is what we're committed to doing.
Yeah, I mean, and I know we're talking about Amazon here, but I mean, FedEx is doing the same thing. They create their own subsidiary and try and claim that drivers are not under their control. I don't know about UPS, but it's the same playbook. And it's all basically a scam to avoid accountability for the work of your employer or of your employee.
Well, and really what it's doing is it's pushing off the effects of their accidents onto the public, right? They know their trucks are going to be in accidents. They deliberately set up a system where they're run by quote unquote independent contractors who are underinsured. And all that does is shift the cost of their accidents and their operations off to the people that their drivers run into. So when one of these cases comes up, it's just, I guess, the bottom line of what we're trying to say here is it's important to get an attorney that knows about these issues and knows what to look for.
Yep, I agree.
Well said, Lincoln. We want to thank everybody for viewing this podcast. The Trucking Injury Law Group is here to help out in any way. Don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we look forward to seeing you again in a future podcast.
That concludes another episode of the Truck Crash Litigators Podcast, hosted by the Trucking Injury Law Group and part of the Lawyer Minds ecosystem. Thank you for listening, and we truly hope it was worth your time. Please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Explore the other content that Lawyer Minds has to offer and engage with us on social media. Your feedback and ideas are always welcomed. See you next time.